The alarm went off at 5:30 a.m., cutting through the darkness of my bedroom like a knife. I reached out from under the covers, my hand fumbling across the nightstand until I found my phone and silenced the piercing beep. For a moment, I lay there in the pre-dawn stillness, listening to my wife Sarah's soft breathing beside me, contemplating whether I really wanted to do this for another day. 23 years on the force, 23 years of wearing the badge, responding to calls, seeing the worst that humanity had to offer. Some days it felt like a calling. Other days, most days if I'm being honest, it just felt like a job that paid the bills, provided health insurance, and would eventually give me a pension if I could just make it another 7 years to retirement. I swung my legs out of bed, my knees popping as I stood. 51 years old, and my body reminded me of that fact every morning. The doctor said the arthritis in my left knee was from an old foot chase back in '09, when I'd jumped a fence pursuing a suspect and landed wrong. The suspect got away. I got chronic pain and a prescription for ibuprofen. The bathroom light was harsh after the darkness of the bedroom. I squinted at my reflection in the mirror, gray hair starting to dominate what used to be brown, lines around my eyes that hadn't been there a decade ago, a slight paunch that no amount of gym time seemed to eliminate. Officer Daniel Foster, Riverside Police Department. Not quite the young hotshot I'd once been. I showered quickly, the hot water helping to loosen my stiff joints. Sarah had the coffee maker on a timer, and I could smell it brewing as I dried off. Small mercies. We'd been married 27 years, and she'd learned long ago that I wasn't human until I'd had at least one cup. By 6:15 I was dressed in my uniform, the dark navy blue of the Riverside PD, badge polished and pinned above my left pocket, nameplate reading Foster above my right. I checked my duty belt methodically, the same routine I'd performed thousands of times. Handcuffs, pepper spray, radio, flashlight, and my service weapon, a Glock 17 that I'd qualified with just last month. Everything in its place. Sarah was up by the time I got downstairs, wearing her bathrobe and pouring 2 cups of coffee. She'd been a nurse for 30 years, worked nights at Riverside General, and had just gotten home herself 2 hours ago. We were like ships passing in the night most weeks, our schedules rarely syncing up. "Morning," she said, sliding a cup across the kitchen counter to me. "Quiet night?" "Just got up. Haven't checked the news yet." I took a long sip, feeling the caffeine start to work its magic. How was the ER? 2 car accidents, a stabbing, and a guy who decided to see if he could deep fry a turkey indoors. She shook her head. 3rd-degree burns on 40% of his body. People are idiots. Tell me about it. I grabbed a banana from the fruit bowl. I'll probably see some of those same idiots today, just in a different context. "You be careful out there," she said, like she did every morning. It had become ritual, like saying, "I love you," or kissing goodbye. After 23 years of me wearing a badge, Sarah had learned not to dwell on the dangers. But the worry was always there, lurking beneath the surface of our normal conversations. Always am. I kissed her cheek. "Get some sleep. I'll see you tonight. If your shift doesn't run over." "If my shift doesn't run over," I agreed. The drive to the station took 20 minutes through the slowly waking streets of Riverside, California. It was late October, and the morning air had that crisp quality that reminded you summer was finally losing its grip. I'd lived in Riverside my whole life, grew up here, went to Martin Luther King High School, married my high school sweetheart, raised 2 kids who'd since moved away to pursue their own lives. My daughter Jessica was a lawyer in San Francisco. My son Mike was in the Army, currently stationed in Germany. I was proud of them both, even if I didn't see them as much as I'd like. Riverside had changed a lot over the years. What had once been a sleepy city in the Inland Empire had grown into a sprawling urban area of over 330,000 people. More people meant more crime, more calls, more everything. The department had grown too, but never quite fast enough to keep up with the population boom. I pulled into the station parking lot at 6:45, 15 minutes before my shift started. Early, like always. My father had been a cop too, before he retired in '98, and he'd drilled into me that being on time meant being late. "If you're not 15 minutes early, you're not serious about the job," he used to say. The station was a modern building, constructed in 2015 after the old one had been deemed too small and outdated. 3 stories of concrete and glass, with a lobby for public services, administrative offices, and a roll call room where patrol officers gathered before their shifts. I swiped my badge at the employee entrance and headed inside. "Morning, Foster," Officer Janet Rodriguez called out as I walked past the break room. She was pouring herself coffee from the industrial-sized pot that was kept perpetually full. "Morning, Janet. How's your kid doing?" "Getting over the flu, finally. Thanks for asking." She added 2 sugars to her coffee. "You working day shift this week?" "All week. Back to nights next Monday." "Lucky you. I've got graveyard for another month." "My sleep schedule is completely destroyed." I sympathized. Rotating shifts were one of the worst parts of the job. Just when your body adjusted to one schedule, they'd switch you to another. I'd worked graveyard plenty of times over the years. The things you saw at 3 in the morning would stick with you forever. The roll call room was starting to fill up as 7 o'clock approached. About 20 officers worked day shift, covering the various districts that made up Riverside. I took my usual seat in the 3rd row, nodding to familiar faces. Officer Marcus Webb sat down next to me, a younger guy in his early 30s who'd been on the force about 6 years. "Hey, Dan. Ready for another thrilling day of protecting and serving?" "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied. "What did you get up to on your days off?" "Took the kids to the pumpkin patch. They're already demanding Halloween costumes that cost more than my first car." He laughed. "My daughter wants to be Elsa from Frozen. My son wants to be Spider-Man. Again, 3rd year in a row. Could be worse. My son wanted to be a zombie one year and insisted I help him with realistic gore makeup. Scared the hell out of the neighbors." We chatted for a few more minutes until Sergeant Linda Morrison walked in, clipboard in hand. She was a no-nonsense woman in her mid-40s. Been a sergeant for about 8 years. Fair but tough, which is exactly what you want in a supervisor. "All right, settle down," she called out, and the room quieted. "Let's run through today's assignments and see what fresh hell awaits us." She went through the usual briefings: BOLO alerts for wanted suspects, stolen vehicles, recent crime trends in different parts of the city. There'd been a string of car break-ins in the La Sierra area, a couple of armed robberies near the university, and the ongoing problem of homeless encampments that kept popping up and causing complaints from residents. "Foster and Webb, you're in District 4 today," Sergeant Morrison said, consulting her roster. "We've been getting complaints about suspicious activity near the Canyon Springs shopping area. Probably nothing, but keep an eye out. Also, there's been an uptick in domestic disturbance calls in that area. Stay sharp." I nodded. District 4 was familiar territory. A mix of residential neighborhoods and commercial areas, generally middle class, with pockets of lower-income housing. Not the worst area, not the best. Just typical suburban sprawl with typical suburban problems. "Any questions?" Sergeant Morrison looked around the room. "No?" "Good. Stay safe out there. Watch each other's backs. And for God's sake, remember to fill out your paperwork properly. I spent 2 hours yesterday fixing reports because half of you can't seem to figure out proper incident classification." A few officers chuckled. Paperwork was the bane of every cop's existence. Necessary, tedious, and never-ending. We were dismissed at 7:15. I grabbed my portable radio from the charging station, clipped it to my shoulder, and headed out to the motor pool. I'd been assigned Unit 47 for the day, a Ford Police Interceptor with about 60,000 miles on it. I did my usual inspection, checked the lights, the siren, the computer terminal mounted on the dashboard, made sure the shotgun was secured in its rack, verified that the first aid kit was stocked. Everything seemed in order. Marcus pulled up beside me in Unit 51. "You want to grab breakfast before we head to the district?" I checked my watch. "Sure. The usual place?" "Where else?" The usual place was a diner called Molly's, about 10 minutes from the station. It had been a cop hangout for as long as I could remember. Decent coffee, cheap breakfast, and owners who appreciated law enforcement. Marcus and I had fallen into the habit of starting most shifts with breakfast there when our schedules aligned. We caravanned over, parking in the lot where we could keep an eye on our vehicles. Inside, the morning rush was in full swing. Molly's catered to working people, construction workers, nurses coming off night shift, cops like us. The decor hadn't changed since the 80s. Red vinyl booths, a long counter with rotating stools, and walls covered in local memorabilia and faded photographs. "Hey, officers." Betty, the longtime waitress, greeted us with a smile. She had to be in her 60s by now, had been working at Molly's for as long as I'd been coming here. "Your usual spots are open." We slid into a booth near the window. I didn't even need to look at the menu. 2 eggs over easy, bacon, wheat toast, coffee. I'd ordered the same breakfast hundreds of times. "So," Marcus said after Betty had taken our orders, "you hear about Patterson?" "No, what about him?" "Retiring. Put in his papers last week. 30 years on the force, and he's done." I felt a strange mix of emotions. Officer Bill Patterson had been with the department since before I joined. We'd worked together plenty of times over the years. Good cop, solid guy. But hearing about his retirement reminded me of my own expiration date. 7 more years, assuming I made it that long. Good for him, I said. He's earned it. What's he going to do? Said something about buying an RV and touring the national parks with his wife. Living the dream, right? The dream, I echoed, though I wasn't entirely sure what my retirement dream looked like. Sarah and I had talked about traveling, maybe spending more time with the grandkids when they eventually came along, but it still felt abstract, like something that would happen to someone else. Our food arrived and we ate while discussing lighter topics. Sports, family, the latest department gossip. It was comfortable, routine. These moments of normalcy were part of what made the job bearable. Soon enough we'd be back out there, dealing with people on the worst days of their lives. But for now, we could just be 2 guys having breakfast. We finished up around 8:30 and headed to District 4. The morning shift was typically quieter than evening or night. Most criminals aren't early risers. We'd spend the first few hours patrolling, checking on businesses, responding to minor calls. The serious stuff usually came later. I drove through the familiar streets, past strip malls and housing developments, elementary schools and parks. My radio crackled periodically with dispatches to other units. A fender bender on Magnolia, a shoplifter at Target, a noise complaint. Standard stuff. Unit 47, this is dispatch. The radio suddenly spoke, the dispatcher's calm voice cutting through the white noise. I picked up the handset. This is Unit 47, go ahead. We have a wellness check requested at 2847 Oakmont Drive. Anonymous caller reported concern about an elderly resident, requesting you do a check on the individual. I copied down the address. Wellness checks were common, usually called in by concerned neighbors or family members who hadn't heard from someone in a while. Most of the time they were nothing, just an elderly person who'd unplugged their phone or been napping. Sometimes they were more serious. We'd found more than a few deceased individuals over the years during wellness checks. Unit 47 responding. I radioed back. ETA about 10 minutes. Marcus heard the call on his radio and pulled up alongside me at the next light. You want backup for that? Probably not necessary, but sure, come along. Better to have 2 of us if there's actually a problem. We drove to Oakmont Drive, a residential street in an older neighborhood. The houses here had been built in the 70s. Single-story ranch-style homes with small yards, most well-maintained but showing their age. Trees lined the street, their leaves just starting to turn colors with the changing season. 2847. Oakmont was a beige house with brown trim, set back slightly from the street. The yard was neat, grass recently mowed, though the flower beds looked somewhat neglected. An older model Toyota Camry sat in the driveway, and I could see newspapers piled up on the front porch. I parked in front, and Marcus pulled up behind me. We both got out, hands resting instinctively near our duty belts, not expecting trouble, but ready for it. Old habits. See the newspapers? Marcus pointed. That's not a great sign. He was right. 3 or 4 days' worth at least, still in their plastic sleeves. Either the resident wasn't picking them up or wasn't able to. We walked up the driveway, and I knocked firmly on the front door. Riverside Police Department. We're here for a wellness check. No answer. I waited 30 seconds and knocked again, louder this time. Sir or ma'am, this is the police. We need to verify that you're okay. Still nothing. I tried the doorknob. Locked. I walked over to the large front window and cupped my hands around my eyes, peering through the gap in the curtains. I could see a living room, furniture that looked like it had been there since the Carter administration, a television that wasn't on, no signs of movement. Anything? Marcus asked. Can't see much. Let's try around back. We walked along the side of the house, checking windows as we went. Most had curtains drawn. The backyard was small and fenced, with a sliding glass door that led into what looked like a kitchen. I knocked on the glass. Police! Wellness check! Through the glass I could see dirty dishes in the sink, a coffee mug sitting on the counter. Still no movement, no response. We should probably call it in, see if we can get authorization to make entry, Marcus said. If someone's in there and hurt. He didn't need to finish the thought. Time was critical in medical emergencies, but we also couldn't just break into someone's house without proper cause. The legal complications of an improper entry could be significant. I was about to call dispatch when I heard something, a shuffling sound from inside the house, then a voice, muffled but audible. Go away! I don't want any visitors. Relief and concern mixed together. Relief that someone was alive in there. Concern about why they weren't coming to the door. Sir, this is Officer Foster with the Riverside Police Department. We received a call expressing concern about your welfare. Can you come to the door so we can see that you're all right? I'm fine, just leave me alone. The voice sounded elderly, male, and agitated. I exchanged a look with Marcus. This was getting complicated. Sir, I understand you want privacy, but we need to verify visually that you're unharmed. If you could just come to the door and show yourself, we can be on our way. I said go away. I know my rights. You can't come in here without a warrant. He wasn't wrong about that. But the newspapers, the ignored wellness check, the agitated tone, something felt off about this whole situation. Sir, nobody's trying to come into your home. We just want to make sure you're okay. A neighbor was worried about you. There was a pause, then. Which neighbor? Who called you? The call was anonymous, sir, but someone cared enough to check on you. That's a good thing. Now please, just come to the door. It was that bitch across the street, wasn't it? Martha. She's always spying on me, always calling the police. I'm going to sue her for harassment. I could hear him moving around inside now, getting closer to the sliding glass door. Through the glass, I saw a figure approaching. An elderly man, probably in his 70s or early 80s, wearing a bathrobe and shuffling with uncertain steps. He reached the sliding door but didn't open it. Instead, he glared at us through the glass. His face was unshaven, his white hair uncombed and wild. His eyes had a quality I'd learned to recognize over the years. Confusion mixed with anger. The look of someone not quite processing reality correctly. Are you all right, sir? I asked, speaking clearly and calmly. Have you been eating? Taking your medications? I don't need medications. There's nothing wrong with me. You people just want to lock me up, take my house, steal everything I've worked for. Classic paranoid thinking. I'd seen it countless times, usually in elderly individuals dealing with dementia or other cognitive decline. Or sometimes it was mental illness, untreated and spiraling. No one wants to lock you up, sir. We're just here to help. What's your name? None of your business. You have no right to be here. This is private property. I'm calling my lawyer. He turned away from the door, shuffling back toward the interior of the house. Marcus and I looked at each other, both thinking the same thing. This wasn't going to end well. Should we call for a supervisor? Marcus suggested. Maybe Adult Protective Services? Before I could answer, dispatch crackled to life on my radio. All units, we have a structure fire at 4500 Magnolia Avenue. Multiple calls coming in. Units 23, 31, and 45 respond for traffic control. The radio continued with other calls. A traffic accident, a domestic disturbance, a suspicious person report. The day was picking up, the city waking up and presenting its usual chaos. I keyed my radio. Dispatch, this is Unit 47. We're still at the wellness check at 2847 Oakmont. The resident is non-cooperative but appears to be mobile. Requesting guidance on how to proceed. Stand by. Unit 47. We waited, watching the house. Through the kitchen window, I could see the elderly man moving around, talking to himself. Every few seconds he'd glance toward us, his expression hostile. This could be a long standoff, Marcus observed. He's clearly got some issues, but if he won't cooperate and he's not presenting an immediate danger. The radio crackled again. Unit 47, dispatch. Contact made with the reporting party. She states the resident is Harold Jennings, 79 years old, widower, lives alone. She's concerned because she hasn't seen him in several days, and he usually is outside every morning. Also reports he has been increasingly erratic in recent weeks. Harold Jennings. At least now I had a name to work with. Copy that dispatch. Can you run Harold Jennings, DOB, probably early 1940s? See if he has any history? Stand by. I turned back to the house and knocked on the glass again. Mr. Jennings? Harold? I know you can hear me. I just want to help. Your neighbors are worried about you. Neighbors? He spat the word. Spies, more like. Always watching. Always judging. Well, I don't need their concern. I don't need anything from anybody. When's the last time you ate, Harold? When's the last time you took your medicine? I don't take medicine. Medicine is poison. The pharmaceutical companies just want to control us, make us docile, easier to manipulate. Definitely some paranoid ideation there. Combined with his age and the concerned neighbor's report of increasing erratic behavior, this was looking more and more like a mental health crisis or cognitive decline. The radio interrupted my thoughts. Unit 47, we have records for Harold Jennings. One contact for disturbing the peace 3 months ago, verbal warning issued. No wants or warrants. Previous address lists him with a Susan Jennings, deceased 2018. No next of kin listed in our system. So he'd lost his wife 6 years ago and had been living alone since. That explained some of it. Elderly widowers often declined rapidly after losing their spouses, especially if they didn't have family nearby to check on them. Copy that dispatch. Request you contact Adult Protective Services. See if we can get someone out here to evaluate Mr. Jennings. 10-4, Unit 47. Be advised, APS response time is typically several hours. Of course it was. I looked at Marcus, who shrugged. We can't force entry without cause, and him being paranoid isn't quite enough, but we also can't just leave. What if he falls, has a medical emergency, or hurts himself? It was a familiar dilemma in police work, caught between respecting someone's rights and ensuring their safety. I'd been in this situation dozens of times over the years. Sometimes there was no good solution, just varying degrees of bad ones. I was considering our options when Mr. Jennings appeared at the sliding door again. But this time, something was different. In his right hand, he held a large kitchen knife. The blade had to be 8 inches long. "I told you to leave," he shouted, his voice cracking. "You're not taking me. You're not putting me in one of those homes. I'll defend my property." My hand instinctively moved to my service weapon, though I didn't draw it. Beside me, I felt Marcus tense up, his body language shifting into a defensive posture. "Harold, put the knife down," I said firmly but calmly. "Nobody's trying to take you anywhere, but you're scaring us with that weapon. Put it down so we can talk." "No, you'll break in and drag me away. I know how this works. They took my friend Robert, said he couldn't care for himself, put him in a nursing home, and he was dead in 6 months. I'm not going out like that." The situation had just escalated from a difficult wellness check to a potential deadly force scenario. A man armed with a knife, clearly not thinking rationally, and 2 cops standing in his backyard. All the ingredients for tragedy. "Marcus, call for backup," I said quietly, "and get a sergeant here." He stepped away, speaking into his radio, while I kept my attention focused on Mr. Jennings. "Harold, listen to me. I've been a cop for 23 years. I've helped a lot of people in situations like this. Nobody wants to hurt you. Nobody wants to take your house. We just want to make sure you're safe. But I need you to put that knife down before someone gets hurt." "You'll hurt me. You'll shoot me. I've seen it on the news. Cops shooting old people." "That's not going to happen here, Harold. But I need you to work with me. Put the knife down, and we'll figure this out together." Behind me, I heard Marcus finish his radio call. "Backup's en route. ETA 5 minutes. Sergeant Morrison is coming too." 5 minutes. A lot could happen in 5 minutes. I kept my eyes on Mr. Jennings, watching his body language, looking for any sign that he might actually try to use that knife. Was he just scared and defensive, or was he deteriorated enough to actually attack? "Stay back or I'll use this." Mr. Jennings pressed against the glass door, the knife held in front of him like a talisman. His hand was shaking, whether from age, fear, or adrenaline. I couldn't tell. This was going to be a very long day, and it wasn't even 9 o'clock yet. "Stay back or I'll use this." Mr. Jennings pressed against the glass door, the knife held in front of him like a talisman. His hand was shaking, whether from age, fear, or adrenaline. I couldn't tell. This was going to be a very long day, and it wasn't even 9 o'clock yet. I took a slow step backward, my hands raised to show I meant no threat. "Okay, Harold, I'm backing up. See? Nobody's coming toward you. Nobody's threatening you." The old man's eyes darted between Marcus and me, wild and unfocused. His bathrobe hung open, revealing a stained undershirt beneath. I could see his chest heaving with rapid breaths. This wasn't just paranoia. This was full-blown panic, mixed with confusion. "Harold, how about this?" I said, keeping my voice level and calm. "How about you lock that door, and we'll stay out here. We're not going anywhere, but we're not coming in either. Does that sound fair? You'll break in the moment I turn my back." "No, we won't. I give you my word. Officer Marcus and I are going to stand right here where you can see us. We're not going to break in. We just need to make sure you're safe." Behind me, I heard the approaching sirens. Backup was arriving. That could either help de-escalate the situation or make it worse. More cops sometimes increase the panic level for someone already on edge. 2 patrol cars pulled up in front of the house. I recognized Officer Janet Rodriguez and Officer Tom Chen getting out. Marcus waved them over, and they approached the backyard carefully, taking in the scene. "What have we got?" Janet asked quietly. 79-year-old male, Harold Jennings, alone in the house, armed with a kitchen knife. Marcus briefed her. "Possible dementia or mental health crisis. He's refusing to cooperate, making threats, but hasn't tried to harm himself or come outside. Adult Protective Services? Called, but they're hours out." Another car arrived. Sergeant Morrison. She got out and walked over with the purposeful stride of someone who'd handled hundreds of these situations. She assessed the scene quickly, her eyes moving from us to the house to Mr. Jennings visible through the glass door. "Status?" she asked me. "He's scared, Sarge. Lost his wife a few years back. Living alone, showing signs of cognitive decline. Neighbor called for a wellness check. He sees us as a threat. Thinks we're going to forcibly remove him and put him in a nursing home." Sergeant Morrison nodded, processing the information. "Has he made any aggressive moves toward you?" "No, ma'am. He came to the door with the knife, but hasn't attempted to open it or come outside. Right now he's defensive, not aggressive." "Good. Let's keep it that way." She stepped forward slightly, positioning herself where Mr. Jennings could see her. "Mr. Jennings, I'm Sergeant Morrison. I'm in charge here. I want to help you, but I need you to help me." "Can you do that?" "More cops," Mr. Jennings said, his voice cracking. "You're surrounding me. This is what they do. They surround you, then they attack. Nobody's attacking anybody, sir. These officers are here to make sure everyone stays safe, including you. But I need you to put that knife down. You're holding a weapon, and that makes everyone nervous. Put it down, and we can talk about what you need. I need you all to leave. I understand that's what you want," Sergeant Morrison said, "but we can't do that until we know you're safe. You haven't been outside in days. You're not picking up your newspapers. People are worried about you. That tells me something might be wrong. So help me understand. Are you hurt? Are you sick? Do you need medical attention?" "I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with me." "Then why won't you put the knife down and talk to us like reasonable people?" Mr. Jennings seemed to struggle with this question. His face contorted with emotion, fear, anger, confusion all mixing together. Because if I put it down, you'll take me away. I know how this works. My friend Robert, they said he needed help, and then he was gone. I'm not going. This is my house. Susan and I. We bought this house in 1974. We raised our kids here. Everything I have. It's all here." For the first time, I heard something beyond paranoia in his voice. I heard grief. This wasn't just an old man with dementia refusing help. This was someone clinging desperately to the last remnants of a life that had slipped away from him. Sergeant Morrison heard it too. Her expression softened slightly. "Susan was your wife?" She passed 6 years ago." His voice broke. "Cancer. I took care of her until the end. Right here in our bedroom. She didn't want to die in some hospital. She wanted to be home. That must have been very hard." Sergeant Morrison said gently. "You sound like you were a good husband." "I tried to be. 53 years we were married." 53 years. And now she's gone. And the kids. They moved away. California's too expensive, they said. They have their own lives in Arizona, in Oregon. They call sometimes, but he trailed off. I could see where this was going. A widower, isolated, probably depressed, his cognitive function declining. He was scared and alone, holding on to the only thing he had left. His house, his independence, his memories. "Harold," I said, drawing his attention back to me. "I lost my father 3 years ago. He was a cop too. Worked for this same department for 30 years. The last few years were hard. He didn't want to admit he couldn't do things anymore. Didn't want help. My mom had to practically fight him to accept care." Mr. Jennings looked at me, some of the wildness fading from his eyes. "But you know what?" I continued. "Accepting help didn't make him weak. It didn't mean giving up. It meant he got to stay in his home longer, got to keep his dignity, got to spend quality time with his grandkids instead of struggling alone. That's what we want for you, Harold. Not to take everything away, just to help you hold on to what matters." For a moment I thought I'd gotten through to him. His grip on the knife loosened slightly, and his shoulders sagged. Then a car door slammed somewhere on the street. The sudden noise shattered the moment. Mr. Jennings jerked, his paranoia flooding back. "This is a trick. You're trying to manipulate me. I won't fall for it." He backed away from the glass door, disappearing into the interior of the house. "Damn it," Marcus muttered. Sergeant Morrison's radio crackled. "Sergeant Morrison, this is dispatch. We have reports of a possible armed subject at 2847 Oakmont. Multiple callers reporting police presence and someone with a weapon. Copy that, dispatch. Situation is contained. Subject is inside residence. Officers are outside maintaining perimeter. No shots fired. No immediate threat to public. Great. Now the neighbors were calling in, probably watching from their windows. This was exactly what we didn't need, an audience and increased pressure to resolve the situation quickly. We need to make a decision here, Sergeant Morrison said. We can't maintain a standoff indefinitely, and if he's deteriorating cognitively, he could hurt himself in there. What about family? Janet asked. Can we contact his kids? Get them on the phone? I radioed dispatch. Can you run a more detailed background on Harold Jennings? We need contact information for next of kin. He mentioned kids who moved out of state. Stand by, Unit 47. While we waited, I moved around to the side of the house, trying to get a visual on where Mr. Jennings had gone. Through a window, I could see into what looked like a bedroom. Mr. Jennings was sitting on the edge of the bed, still holding the knife, rocking slightly back and forth. He was talking to himself, though I couldn't make out the words. The bedroom walls were covered with photographs, wedding pictures, family portraits, kids at various ages, grandchildren maybe, a life documented in fading snapshots. On the nightstand, I could see pill bottles, several of them, so he did have medications, regardless of his claims otherwise. Sarge, I can see him, I called out. He's in the bedroom, still armed but not actively threatening. Looks like he might be having some kind of episode, talking to himself, agitated. Sergeant Morrison came around to look. She took in the scene, her expression troubled. This is going to end badly if we don't do something, she said quietly. Either he's going to hurt himself accidentally, or we're going to be forced to make entry, and that could go sideways fast. The radio crackled with the information I'd requested. Unit 47, we have contact information for 2 adult children, Robert Jennings in Phoenix, Arizona, and Linda Jennings Cartwright in Portland, Oregon. Dispatch is attempting to reach them now. Copy that. Let us know when you make contact. We waited, maintaining our positions around the house. Officer Chen had moved to the front to keep any curious neighbors back. Janet was watching the other side. Marcus and I stayed near the back, while Sergeant Morrison coordinated with dispatch and considered our options. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Inside, I could still see Mr. Jennings on the bed, occasionally standing and pacing, then sitting back down. The knife never left his hand. Finally, the radio came to life again. Unit 47, we've made contact with Robert Jennings. He's requesting to speak with the officer in charge. Sergeant Morrison took the call on her cell phone, putting it on speaker so we could hear. A male voice came through, tense and worried. This is Robert Jennings. What's happening with my father? Mr. Jennings, this is Sergeant Morrison with Riverside Police. Your father is safe at the moment, but we're concerned about his welfare. We're at his residence following a wellness check request. He's refusing to cooperate and is armed with a knife. Can you tell me about his recent mental state? There was a long pause. God, I was afraid something like this would happen. He's been declining. I noticed it about a year ago when I visited for Thanksgiving. He was forgetting things, repeating himself, getting confused about basic stuff. I tried to talk to him about seeing a doctor, maybe getting some help, but he refused. Got angry, accused me of trying to steal from him. Has he been diagnosed with any cognitive disorders? Not officially. He won't go to a doctor. But my sister and I, we've been talking about it. It looks like dementia, probably Alzheimer's. Our grandmother had it, but Dad's so stubborn. He won't admit anything's wrong. Is he taking any medications? He's supposed to be taking blood pressure medication and something for his cholesterol, but I don't know if he actually takes them. Last time I called, he told me he threw them all away because he doesn't trust pharmaceutical companies. Sergeant Morrison and I exchanged a look. That matched what we'd observed. Mr. Jennings, we may need to take your father into custody for a mental health evaluation. Given his age and condition, and the fact that he's armed and making threats, we're concerned he's a danger to himself. But it would help tremendously if you could talk to him, try to calm him down. I can try, but I don't know if it'll help. Sometimes he doesn't even recognize my voice on the phone. We'd appreciate anything you can do. Sergeant Morrison hung up and looked at me. Foster, you seem to have the best rapport with him. You take the phone, we'll get him on the line with his son. I nodded and moved back to the sliding glass door. I could see Mr. Jennings in the bedroom, still visible through the connecting hallway. Harold, I called out. Harold, I have your son Robert on the phone. He wants to talk to you. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Mr. Jennings appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking suspicious. Robert? Why would Robert be calling? Because he's worried about you. We contacted him to let him know we're here. He wants to make sure you're okay. Will you talk to him? Mr. Jennings shuffled closer to the glass door, still gripping the knife. Put him on. Sergeant Morrison had Robert on her phone. She nodded to me, and I held up my own phone, dialing into a three-way call so we could hear both sides. Dad? Robert's voice came through, strained with emotion. Dad, it's Robert. Are you okay? Robert, Mr. Jennings pressed closer to the glass, his face suddenly vulnerable. They called you? These police, they're trying to take me away. Dad, they're just trying to help. They said you have a knife. You need to put it down before someone gets hurt. They want to put me in a home. I won't go, Robert. I won't leave this house. This is where your mother and I. This is home. I know, Dad. I know. But you're scaring people. You're scaring me. Please just put the knife down and talk to them. They're not going to force you into anything, but they need to make sure you're safe. I'm fine. I keep telling everyone I'm fine. Dad, Robert's voice broke slightly. You're not fine. Linda and I, we've been worried about you for months. You forget things. You get confused. You think people are out to get you. That's not like you. That's not the dad I grew up with. There's nothing wrong with my mind. But even as Mr. Jennings said it, I could see doubt creeping into his expression. Some part of him, buried beneath the paranoia and confusion, knew something was wrong. Then prove it, Robert said. Put the knife down. Let the officers check on you. Let them help you. If everything's really fine, they'll leave. But you have to cooperate. Please, Dad, for me. Mr. Jennings stood there, trembling, tears starting to roll down his weathered cheeks. I don't want to leave my house, Robert. This is all I have left of her, of our life together. You don't have to leave, Robert said gently. Not today. But you do need to put that knife down. Can you do that for me? The old man looked down at the knife in his hand as if seeing it for the first time. His expression shifted. Confusion, shame, fear all mixing together. I don't remember picking this up, he said quietly. Why do I have this? My heart sank. The confusion was deepening. He was losing the thread of reality, forgetting even the immediate past. It's okay, Dad. Just set it down, put it on the counter, and step away from it. Okay, Mr. Jennings said, his voice small and lost. Okay, where do I? He shuffled to the kitchen counter, his movements slow and uncertain. He placed the knife down, his hand lingering on it for a moment before pulling away. Then he turned back toward the glass door, looking at us with frightened, confused eyes. What's happening to me? He asked, and the raw vulnerability in his voice was heartbreaking. You're going to be okay, Dad, Robert said. The officers are going to come in and help you now. Don't be afraid. Just do what they say. Sergeant Morrison gave me a nod. This was the moment. We had to move now, while he was calm and disarmed, before the confusion or paranoia kicked back in. Harold, I said clearly, I'm going to open this door and come inside. I'm not going to hurt you. I just need to make sure you're safe. Is that okay? He nodded mutely, tears still streaming down his face. I tested the sliding door. It was unlocked. I slid it open slowly, my hand near my weapon but not on it. Marcus stayed behind me, ready to back me up if needed. Janet moved to cover the front entrance. I'm coming in now, Harold, I said, stepping through the doorway into the kitchen. The smell hit me immediately. The house hadn't been properly cleaned in weeks, maybe longer. Dirty dishes, spoiled food, the general mustiness of neglect. Mr. Jennings stood in the middle of the kitchen, looking small and fragile in his bathrobe. Up close, I could see he'd lost weight. The bathrobe hung on him loosely. His skin had an unhealthy pallor. This was a man who hadn't been taking care of himself. It's okay, I said softly, approaching slowly with my hands visible. I'm Officer Foster. I'm here to help. I don't understand, he said, his voice wavering. What's wrong with me? Why can't I remember things? You're going to be okay. We're going to get you some help, get you checked out by a doctor. But first, I need you to come sit down. I guided him to a kitchen chair, and he sank into it gratefully. Marcus came in behind me, securing the knife and doing a quick sweep of the house to make sure there were no other weapons or hazards. Dad, are you still there? Robert's voice came from my phone. I'm here, Mr. Jennings said. Robert, I'm scared. I know, Dad, but Officer Foster is going to take care of you. I'm going to book a flight out there. I'll be there as soon as I can, probably tonight. Linda, too. We're coming, okay? Okay, he whispered. Sergeant Morrison came inside, assessing the situation. We need to get him evaluated. I'm calling for an ambulance. Within minutes, paramedics arrived. They were gentle with Mr. Jennings, checking his vitals, asking him questions. His blood pressure was elevated, and he was showing clear signs of dehydration and malnutrition. We're going to take you to the hospital, Mr. Jennings, one of the paramedics said, just to get you checked out, make sure everything's okay. Will I come back home? He asked, looking around at his kitchen with lost eyes. The paramedic looked at me, and I saw the same thing I was feeling. This man probably wouldn't be coming back home, at least not to live alone. He needed care, supervision, help that a house full of memories couldn't provide. "Let's just focus on getting you feeling better," the paramedic said diplomatically. They loaded Mr. Jennings onto a gurney, and I walked alongside as they wheeled him out to the ambulance. Neighbors had gathered on the street, watching the drama unfold. I saw an elderly woman across the street, watching with worried eyes. Probably Martha, the neighbor who'd called it in. She'd done the right thing, even if Mr. Jennings had seen it as betrayal. Before they closed the ambulance doors, Mr. Jennings reached out and grabbed my hand with surprising strength. "Officer," he said, his eyes clearer for just a moment. "Thank you, and I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. With the knife. I wasn't thinking right." "I know, Harold, you don't have to apologize. We're just glad you're safe. Tell Robert. Tell him I love him. And Linda. I don't tell them enough. You can tell them yourself when they get here tonight," I said gently. He nodded and released my hand. The paramedics closed the doors and the ambulance pulled away. No lights or sirens. This wasn't an emergency anymore. Just an old man being taken to get help that was long overdue. Sergeant Morrison clapped me on the shoulder. "Good work, Foster. That could have gone a lot worse." "Yeah," I said, watching the ambulance disappear around the corner. But I didn't feel like I'd accomplished much. An old man's independence was ending. His life being upended because time and biology had betrayed him. We'd kept him safe, sure. But at what cost? "We need to secure the house," Marcus said. "He won't be back today. Maybe not for a while." We went back inside and did a thorough walkthrough. The state of the place was depressing. Evidence of decline everywhere. Unopened mail stacked up for weeks. Medication bottles with doses clearly missed. Food spoiled in the refrigerator. The bathroom showing signs he'd been having accidents. This was what happens when someone slips through the cracks, when pride and stubbornness prevent them from asking for help until it's too late. I found photographs in the bedroom. Harold and Susan on their wedding day, young and hopeful. Pictures of kids growing up, Christmas mornings, birthdays, graduations, a whole life compressed into frames on a wall. And now Harold was being taken away from all of it. We locked up the house, leaving contact information with the neighbor Martha, who tearfully thanked us for helping Harold. She'd known something was wrong, but didn't know what to do. "He used to be so sharp," she said. "He and Susan were the nicest couple. After she passed, he just faded. I tried to check on him, but he got so paranoid. Last week he accused me of trying to poison his water supply. I didn't know what else to do except call you." "You did the right thing," I assured her. "He needs help that he can't get on his own." Back in the patrol car, Marcus and I sat in silence for a moment. The whole incident had taken nearly 2 hours. It was almost 11 o'clock. "You handled that well," Marcus said. "The way you talked to him, connected with him. Not everyone can do that." 23 years on the job," I said. "You see enough elderly people in crisis, you learn how to talk to them. Or you burn out and stop caring. I've seen both. Which one are you?" I thought about that. Still trying not to burn out. Some days it's harder than others. My radio crackled. "Unit 47, we have a call for you. Domestic disturbance at 3421 Pine Street. Reports of yelling and possible physical altercation." "Unit 47 responding," I said, starting the car. "ETA 10 minutes. And just like that, we were moving on to the next crisis, the next problem, the next person having the worst day of their life. That was the job. An endless parade of human suffering and dysfunction, with occasional moments of actually helping someone mixed in. We drove toward Pine Street, and I tried to shake off the melancholy from the Jennings call. But I kept thinking about him in that ambulance, confused and scared, being taken away from the only home he had left. And I thought about my own father in his last years, struggling with similar issues, too proud to admit he needed help. We all end up there, eventually, if we live long enough. The question is whether we're lucky enough to have people who care, who notice, who call for help before things get truly dire. Harold Jennings was lucky in that way. He had neighbors who cared, a son who was catching a flight to be with him. A lot of elderly people aren't that lucky. They die alone in their houses, undiscovered for days or weeks. I'd been to those calls too. "You okay?" Marcus asked. "Yeah," I lied. "Just thinking. About how that could be any of us someday. Getting old, losing our minds, kids moved away, living alone. It's depressing as hell. That's why I'm planning to die young and leave a good-looking corpse," Marcus joked, trying to lighten the mood. I managed a smile. "In this job, you might get your wish." We arrived at Pine Street, and the domestic disturbance call pulled me back into the present. There was no time to dwell on existential dread about aging and mortality. There was only the next call, the next crisis, the next chance to either help someone or fail them. That was the job. And I still had 7 more years until retirement. Chapter 3. Complications. The domestic disturbance at Pine Street turned out to be a couple in their 30s, arguing over who forgot to pay the electric bill, which had resulted in their power being shut off. They were yelling at each other when we arrived, but there was no violence, just mutual anger and financial stress. I gave them both a cooling-off lecture, suggested they contact the utility company to work out a payment plan, and left them with a warning to keep the noise down, or one of them would be spending the night in jail. By the time we cleared that call, it was nearly noon. Marcus suggested we grab lunch, and I agreed. We stopped at a sandwich shop near the district station, ordered our food, and sat at a table by the window. My phone rang while I was halfway through a turkey club. It was Sarah. "Hey," I answered. "You should be sleeping." "I know, but I couldn't. I saw the news, something about a standoff with an armed subject on Oakmont Drive. That wasn't you, was it?" I should have known she'd find out. Riverside wasn't that big, and the police scanner enthusiasts would have posted about it online within minutes. It was me, but it's over now. Elderly man having a mental health crisis. We got him to the hospital safely. Nobody got hurt. Jesus, Dan. When you said it'd be a normal day, it was a normal day. This is what normal looks like in my line of work. I tried to keep my tone light, but I could hear the worry in her voice and felt guilty for causing it. I know. I worry. I know you do. But I'm fine. 1,700 more days until retirement, remember? She laughed despite herself. You're counting now. Every single one. It was true. I had a small calendar in my locker at the station where I marked off each day worked. A countdown to freedom, or at least to a different kind of life. Well, be careful for all 1,700 of them, she said. I love you. Love you too. Now go to sleep before you're exhausted for your next shift. We hung up, and I finished my sandwich in silence. Marcus was scrolling through his phone, probably checking in with his wife too. We all had people who worried about us, who waited for us to come home safely at the end of each shift. It was part of the job that didn't show up in any police academy curriculum. The weight of carrying other people's fear along with your own. Unit 47, we have another call for you. The dispatcher's voice cut through my thoughts. Report of suspicious activity at Canyon Springs Elementary School. Male subject on campus, acting erratically. School is in lockdown. My blood ran cold. A suspicious person at an elementary school was every cop's nightmare. With school shootings becoming more common, any threat to a school had to be treated as potentially deadly serious. Unit 47 responding, I said, already moving toward the door with Marcus right behind me. ETA 3 minutes. Any description of the subject? White male, approximately 40 to 50 years old, wearing jeans and a dark jacket. Witnesses report he was walking around the playground talking to himself. School staff confronted him, and he became agitated but has not displayed any weapons. Copy that. Are there any other units available? Units 23 and 31 are also responding. School resource officer is on scene. We reached our vehicles and activated lights and sirens, racing toward Canyon Springs Elementary. My mind was running through scenarios. Best case, it was a homeless person who'd wandered onto campus and was having a mental health episode. Worst case. I didn't want to think about worst-case scenarios involving an elementary school. The school was less than 2 miles away. We covered the distance in just over 2 minutes, pulling into the parking lot where 2 other patrol cars were already parked. I could see the school resource officer, Officer Dave Mitchell, standing at the front entrance talking on his radio. Status? I asked as I approached. Subject is contained in the playground area. We've got eyes on him from the office windows. He's pacing, talking to himself, appears highly agitated. No visible weapons, but he's got his hands in his jacket pockets, so I can't rule it out. What about the kids? All in lockdown, secure in their classrooms. Teachers have been briefed. We're keeping this as quiet as possible to avoid panic. I looked toward the playground and could see a figure pacing near the swing sets. A man in his mid-40s with shaggy hair and an unkempt beard, wearing what looked like multiple layers of clothing, despite the relatively warm October day. Officers Chen and Rodriguez from Units 23 and 31 had taken positions at different points around the perimeter. We had the subject surrounded, but approaching him would be risky. If he did have a weapon, he might use it when cornered. Do we have any ID on him? I asked Dave. Nothing yet. But one of the teachers said he looked familiar. Thought maybe he'd been hanging around the neighborhood the last few days. Marcus moved to get a better view. He's definitely talking to someone who isn't there. Could be schizophrenia, drugs, or both. Two major incidents involving mentally unstable individuals in one morning. It was shaping up to be that kind of day. All right, I said. We need to make contact, try to de-escalate before this turns into something worse. Dave, can you get me the principal? I want to know if this guy has any connection to the school, former parent, employee, anything that might explain why he's here. While Dave went to get the principal, I studied the subject. He was pacing in a tight circle, his lips moving constantly. His body language suggested paranoia, jerky movements, constant looking around, hands gripping something in his pockets. Whether that something was a weapon or just his fists, I couldn't tell from this distance. The principal arrived, a woman in her 50s named Dr. Margaret Hayes, who looked understandably stressed. "Do you recognize this man?" I asked, pointing toward the playground. She squinted, then shook her head. "I don't think so, but we have over 600 students. It's possible he's a parent or relative I haven't met. Has anyone called and reported a missing family member? Anyone acting strangely during drop-off this morning?" "Nothing unusual this morning, but I can check with the office staff." She hurried away and I turned back to the situation at hand. We couldn't wait much longer. The man was getting more agitated by the minute, and having a school in lockdown was disruptive and frightening for the kids. "I'm going to try to talk to him," I announced. "Marcus, you're with me. Everyone else, hold positions but be ready to move if this goes south." We approached the playground slowly, hands visible and non-threatening. The man noticed us immediately, his head snapping up like a startled animal. "Sir, I'm Officer Foster with the Riverside Police Department," I called out from about 30 feet away. "We need to talk to you. Can you take your hands out of your pockets for me?" "You're working for them," he shouted, his voice hoarse and strained. "You're all part of it. The surveillance, the control, the chemicals in the water." Classic paranoid delusion. I'd heard similar rants from people experiencing psychotic breaks dozens of times over the years. "I'm not working for anyone except the city of Riverside," I said calmly. "And right now, my job is to make sure everyone stays safe, including you. What's your name?" "Names are just tracking devices, labels they use to control us." "Okay, that's fine. You don't have to tell me your name, but I do need you to take your hands out of your pockets." "Can you do that?" "Why? So you can shoot me? So you can implant the tracking chips? I know how this works." He was backing away, moving toward the school building. That was bad. If he got inside somehow, despite the lockdown, we'd have a barricade situation with hundreds of children in the building. "Nobody's going to shoot you," I said firmly, "and nobody's implanting anything. But you're on school property, and that's making people nervous. These are little kids in there, and the teachers are scared. I need you to come with me so we can talk somewhere else." "The children," his eyes went wide. "They're poisoning the children. The food, the textbooks, the lessons. It's all indoctrination. Someone has to stop them." My hand moved closer to my weapon. If he believed the children were in danger, he might try to save them. People in psychotic states could be capable of anything if they thought they were acting heroically. "The children are fine," I said. "They're safe in their classrooms with their teachers. Nobody's poisoning them. But you're scaring people by being here. Come with me, and we can talk about your concerns. You don't believe me? None of you believe me. But I have proof. I've seen the documents." He reached into his jacket pocket and my body tensed, hand on my holster. "Stop," I commanded. "Don't reach into your pocket. Keep your hands where I can see them." He froze, then slowly pulled his hand out. He was holding a crumpled stack of papers, not a weapon. My heart rate slowed slightly. "See?" He waved the papers. "Evidence. They're adding fluoride to control our minds. They're spraying chemicals in the sky. It's all here." I recognized the papers, printouts from conspiracy theory websites, the kind of stuff that fed the delusions of people who were mentally unwell. In his mind, these papers were proof of vast government conspiracies. In reality, they were just the ramblings of other disturbed individuals on the internet. "Okay, I see you have documents," I said. "Why don't you come with me, and you can show them to me properly? We'll go somewhere quiet, get you some water, and you can explain everything to me. Would that be okay?" He seemed to consider this, his agitation decreasing slightly. "You'll look at the evidence? You'll see what they're doing?" "I promise I'll look at your evidence. But first you need to come with me. This is a school, and you're not supposed to be here. If you come peacefully, we can talk. If you don't, I'll have to arrest you for trespassing. I don't want to do that." Behind me I heard a vehicle arrive, probably a supervisor responding to the school incident. The man's eyes darted toward the new arrival, paranoia flaring again. "More of them! You're surrounding me! "This is a trap." "Nobody's trapping you," I said, keeping my voice steady. "We just want to help, but I need you to stay calm and work with me here." Marcus had been slowly circling to the side, positioning himself to cut off any escape route toward the school building. The man noticed and spun toward him. "Stay back! All of you stay back!" He clutched his papers to his chest like they were precious artifacts. "I know my rights. I have freedom of speech. I can warn people about what's happening." "You absolutely have freedom of speech," I agreed. "But this is private property, school property. You need permission to be here, and right now you don't have that. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to come with me peacefully, or I'm going to have to take you into custody. Your choice." He looked around wildly, realizing he was surrounded. Officers at every exit point, no way out except through us. His breathing became rapid, his body language shifting toward fight or flight. "I need you to make a decision," I pressed. "Right now. Are you coming peacefully?" For a long moment he just stood there trembling. Then his shoulders sagged, the fight going out of him as quickly as it had appeared. "They've already won, haven't they?" he said, his voice breaking. "There's no stopping them. No one will listen." "Come with me," I said gently, approaching slowly. "Let's get you somewhere safe." He didn't resist as I guided him away from the school building. Marcus retrieved the papers he'd dropped, and we walked him to my patrol car. I did a quick pat-down. No weapons, just more crumpled papers, a wallet, and a cell phone with a cracked screen. His ID identified him as Michael Patterson, 43 years old, with an address in a neighborhood about 2 miles from the school. I ran him through the system while Marcus kept an eye on him. "No wants or warrants," dispatch reported, "but we have multiple contacts over the past year. 250-150 holds for psychiatric evaluation, several disturbance calls. Last known address is a board and care facility on Arlington Avenue." A board and care facility meant he'd been receiving some kind of mental health treatment, but clearly he'd either stopped taking medication or the medication wasn't working anymore. "Copy that. We're transporting to Riverside University Medical Center for evaluation." I informed the school that the threat was contained, and they could release the lockdown. Dr. Hayes looked enormously relieved, though I could tell this incident would be the subject of parent emails and emergency board meetings for weeks to come. Michael Patterson sat quietly in the back of my patrol car as we drove to the hospital, occasionally muttering to himself but not causing any problems. I felt sorry for him. Whatever was happening in his brain, schizophrenia most likely, had disconnected him from shared reality. He genuinely believed in the conspiracies that haunted him, and nothing anyone said could convince him otherwise. The psychiatric emergency room at Riverside University Medical Center was familiar territory. I'd transported dozens of people here over the years for 72-hour holds under California's 5150 law, welfare checks that turned into mental health crises, suicide attempts, psychotic breaks, and everything in between. The intake nurse, a tired-looking woman named Sandra, who I'd worked with many times, took one look at Michael Patterson and sighed. "Another one? That's the third today." "Busy morning for everyone," I said. This one was at Canyon Springs Elementary, talking about conspiracies and acting erratically. No violence, but he was definitely in crisis. Sandra processed the paperwork while I gave my statement about the incident. Michael would be held for evaluation, possibly medication adjustment, and hopefully placement in a more secure facility where he could get consistent treatment. "You think he'll stay on his meds this time?" Marcus asked as we walked back to our car. "Probably not," I said honestly. "Most of them don't. They feel better, think they don't need the medication anymore, stop taking it, and the cycle starts over. That's the reality of mental health care in this country, a revolving door that helps people just enough to let them fall through the cracks again." It was approaching 2 o'clock when we finally cleared the hospital. My stomach reminded me that a sandwich 6 hours ago wasn't sufficient fuel for the kind of day I was having. "Unit 47, we have a traffic accident at the intersection of Magnolia and Central. Possible injuries, fire department en route." Unit 47 responding, I acknowledged, though my enthusiasm for responding to anything at this point was non-existent. The accident turned out to be a 3-car fender bender with no serious injuries, just bent metal, deployed airbags, and angry drivers arguing about who had run the red light. I spent the next hour directing traffic, taking statements and filling out accident reports while the tow trucks cleared the vehicles. By the time we finished, it was after 3 o'clock. My shift was supposed to end at 4, and I was counting down the minutes. It had been one of those days where everything felt heavier than usual, where the job's accumulated weight pressed down on my shoulders. "Unit 47, We have one more call for you before end of shift. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Of course there was one more call. Go ahead, dispatch. Welfare check at 2847 Oakmont Drive. Caller states they saw someone enter the residence, requesting you respond to verify security. The Jennings house. Someone had probably seen us there this morning and was now worried about potential burglary or trespassing. Copy that. Responding now. Marcus and I drove back to Oakmont Drive, where everything looked quiet. The newspapers I'd noticed this morning had been removed from the porch, and I could see a car in the driveway. A rental, based on the barcode sticker on the window. I knocked on the front door, and it opened almost immediately. A man in his late 40s stood there, looking exhausted and emotionally wrung out. He had Harold Jennings' eyes. "Officer Foster?" he asked. "Yes, and this is Officer Webb. You must be Robert." "I am. I caught an earlier flight. Got here about an hour ago." He stepped aside. "Come in. I wanted to thank you for what you did this morning." The house looked different already. Someone had been cleaning. The dishes were washed, the mail sorted, the general air of neglect beginning to lift. "How's your father?" I asked. Robert's face fell. "Not good. The hospital did a full evaluation. Advanced Alzheimer's disease. They said he's been declining for probably 2 years, maybe longer. He needs full-time care. There's no way he can live independently anymore." "I'm sorry." "Me too." He looked around the house with sad eyes. "This place. He and my mom bought it 50 years ago. Raised me and my sister here. Every room has memories. And now we have to figure out what to do with it all because Dad can't come home." I didn't know what to say to that. There were no words that made this situation better. "The doctors said you probably saved his life," Robert continued. "He was dehydrated, malnourished. His blood pressure was dangerously high. Another week or two living alone and, well, it could have been much worse. So thank you for being patient with him, for not treating him like just another crazy old man with a knife. He deserves dignity," I said. "Everyone does." We talked for a few more minutes. Robert explained that his sister was flying in tonight, and they'd be spending the next week dealing with medical decisions, legal paperwork, and figuring out their father's future. It was a process I'd seen play out in my own family, and I didn't envy them the journey ahead. "One question," Robert said as we prepared to leave. "When you were talking to him this morning, you mentioned your own father. Were you just saying that to calm him down or—" "No, that was real. My dad was on the force for 30 years. Last few years were hard, watching him struggle with getting older. He passed 3 years ago. I'm sorry, and I'm grateful you used that experience to help mine." We left Robert to his sad task of sorting through a lifetime of possessions and memories. As we drove away, I thought about how many times I'd been in that house over the years. Probably dozens of calls on this street, though I'd never been to the Jennings residence specifically before today. But now, in one morning, I'd become part of their family story. The cop who found Harold with a knife. The day everything changed. "You did good today," Marcus said as we headed back to the station. "With Jennings, with Patterson at the school. Not everyone can talk people down the way you do." 23 years of practice," I said. "And honestly, I was terrified both times. When Jennings had that knife, when Patterson started reaching into his jacket at the school, those moments when you don't know if someone's about to pull a weapon and you have to decide in a split second whether to draw yours. That never gets easier. But you didn't draw. You talked them down. This time. But I've drawn my weapon plenty of times over the years. I've been in situations where talking wasn't enough. I've been lucky so far. Never had to actually fire at anyone. But every one of these calls, there's that possibility. That's what Sarah worries about. That's what keeps me counting days until retirement." We arrived back at the station at 3:45, 15 minutes before shift change. I spent those minutes finishing my reports on the day's calls, documenting everything that had happened from the morning wellness check through the school incident to the final follow-up at the Jennings house. Sergeant Morrison stopped by my desk as I was logging out of the computer. "Hell of a first call this morning, Foster. Hell of a day all around, Sarge. You handled it well, both incidents. That's the kind of de-escalation work we need more of in this department. Lots of younger officers would have rushed in, maybe used force when it wasn't necessary. But you took your time, talked it through, got the right outcome. Just doing the job. Well, the job's lucky to have you. Get out of here. Go home to your wife." I changed out of my uniform, stowed my gear in my locker, and walked out to my personal car, a 10-year-old Honda Accord that had seen better days. The evening sun was setting over Riverside, painting the sky in oranges and purples. It should have been beautiful, but all I felt was tired. The drive home took me through familiar streets, past landmarks I'd known my whole life. The high school where I'd met Sarah, the park where we'd had our wedding reception, the hospital where both our kids were born. Riverside was woven into my DNA, and so was this job. But some days, like today, I wondered if I'd given too much of myself to it. 23 years of seeing people at their worst, of intervening in crises, of carrying other people's trauma home with me. How much of myself had I lost along the way? Sarah's car was in the driveway when I got home. She must have gotten up early, unable to sleep after hearing about the morning's incident. I found her in the kitchen making dinner. "Hey," she said, turning to give me a hug. "Rough day?" You could say that. I held her for a moment, drawing comfort from her solid presence. The wellness check this morning, that was just the start. Had a guy at an elementary school after that. Possible mental health crisis. Traffic accident. The usual chaos. Everyone okay? Physically, yeah. Mentally, emotionally. That's harder to say. I told her about Harold Jennings, about finding him confused and scared with a knife, about talking him down and getting him to the hospital. His son showed up this afternoon, thanked me for saving his dad's life, but I'm not sure I did. I just delayed the inevitable. That man's losing everything. His mind, his independence, his home. All I did was witness it. You kept him safe, Sarah said firmly. You gave his family time to get there, to help him, to make sure his final years are cared for instead of him dying alone in that house. That matters, Dan. I know. Intellectually, I know that, but it doesn't always feel like enough. She studied my face with the practiced eye of someone who'd been married to a cop for nearly 3 decades. How many days until retirement? 1,699. And then I don't know. That's the scary part. This job, it's been my identity for so long. What am I without it? You're my husband, the kid's father, a good man who cares about people. The job is what you do, not who you are. I wanted to believe that. But after 23 years of wearing a badge, of being Officer Foster, I wasn't sure where the job ended, and I began. We ate dinner while Sarah told me about her night shift at the hospital. A different kind of chaos, but chaos nonetheless. We were both in the business of dealing with human suffering, just from different angles. It had always been one of the things that drew us together. We understood the weight of those kinds of jobs. After dinner, I sat in my study and opened my laptop. I did this sometimes after particularly difficult days, searched for news about the people I'd encountered, trying to get closure or understanding that the job itself didn't always provide. I found an article from 6 months ago about Michael Patterson, the man at the school. It was a local human interest piece about his struggle with schizophrenia and his repeated attempts to maintain stability while dealing with a broken mental health care system. He'd been a software engineer before his diagnosis in his mid-30s. Now he cycled between board and care facilities and the streets, unable to hold down a job, struggling to afford medication, trapped in a system that was never designed to actually help people like him. I closed the laptop feeling even worse. What had I accomplished today? Removed him from a school playground and delivered him back to the same failed system that would release him in 3 days, and the whole cycle would start again. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Good working with you today. You okay?" "Yeah, just tired," I texted back. "Talk tomorrow." But I wasn't okay. Not really. Days like this reminded me why cops have such high rates of PTSD, depression, and suicide. It wasn't just the dramatic incidents, the shootings and chases and life-or-death moments. It was the accumulation of sadness, the constant exposure to humanity's worst moments, the feeling that no matter how hard you tried, you were just putting Band-Aids on bullet wounds. I'd started seeing the department therapist about a year ago, not because anything dramatic had happened, but because I'd noticed the weight getting heavier. She told me what I already knew, that compassion fatigue was real, that bearing witness to trauma takes a toll, that it was okay to acknowledge the difficulty of what I did for a living, but knowing it intellectually and feeling it emotionally were 2 different things. Sarah found me in the study at 9 o'clock, still sitting in the dark. "Come to bed," she said gently. "Tomorrow's another day." "That's what I'm afraid of," I admitted. "Tomorrow there'll be another Harold Jennings, another Michael Patterson, another crisis I can maybe help with or maybe just witness, and the day after that, and the day after that, for 1,699 more days. Then don't think about all of them. Just think about tomorrow, one day at a time." She was right, of course. That was the only way to survive this job. One call at a time, one day at a time, one person at a time. You couldn't save everyone. You couldn't fix everything. All you could do was show up and try your best. I followed Sarah to bed, where I lay awake for a long time listening to her breathe. Outside, somewhere in Riverside, night shift officers were responding to calls, dealing with their own versions of Harold Jennings and Michael Patterson. The job never stopped, never paused, never gave anyone time to fully recover before the next crisis hit. But tomorrow I'd put on the uniform again. I'd respond to calls. I'd try to help people who were having the worst days of their lives, because that's what I'd signed up for 23 years ago. And despite everything, I still believed it mattered. Even on days when it felt like nothing I did made any real difference. Even on days when the weight threatened to crush me. Even on days like today. Chapter 4. The Return. I woke up at 5:30 a.m. to my alarm, the familiar beep pulling me from troubled sleep. I'd dreamed about Harold Jennings, except in the dream he'd actually used the knife and I'd had to shoot him. I'd been having versions of that dream all night. Situations from my career replaying with worse outcomes, as if my subconscious was processing all the things that could have gone wrong but didn't. Sarah was already up, just getting home from her night shift. We passed in the hallway, sharing a tired kiss. "How was work?" I asked. 3 stabbings, 2 overdoses, and a guy who decided to settle a bar fight by biting off someone's ear. She shook her head. Never a dull moment at Riverside General. Same here. Different location. Same human chaos. "Be safe today," she said, like always. "Always am," I replied, like always. The routine of getting ready for work was comforting in its familiarity. Shower, shave, uniform, gear check, coffee. By 6:45, I was pulling into the station parking lot, ready for whatever day 2 of the week had in store. Roll call was routine. Sergeant Morrison went through the usual briefings, assigned patrol areas, mentioned that there had been a series of car break-ins in District 3 overnight. Marcus and I were assigned to District 4 again, which meant we'd be covering some of the same areas as yesterday. "Foster," Sergeant Morrison called as we were being dismissed. "Good news on the Jennings situation from yesterday. His family got him placed in a memory care facility last night. Specialized Alzheimer's unit, full-time nursing care. The son wanted me to pass along his thanks again." "That's good to hear, Sarge." It was good news, though it didn't fully lift the melancholy I felt about the whole situation. Harold Jennings was safe and cared for, but he'd also lost everything that made his life his own. I suppose that was the best possible outcome given the circumstances, but it still felt like a loss. Marcus and I grabbed breakfast at Molly's again. Same booth, same order, same comfortable routine. Betty, the waitress, asked if we'd heard about the excitement at Canyon Springs Elementary yesterday, and I confirmed that yes, we'd been the ones to handle it. "My grandson goes there," she said. Teacher told the parents there was a security situation, but that the police handled it perfectly. "So thank you for keeping the kids safe." "Just doing our job," I said, though her words did help lift my mood slightly. Sometimes you needed to be reminded that what you did mattered, even in small ways. We finished breakfast and headed out to start patrol. The morning was clear and cool. Typical October weather in Southern California. Radio traffic was light, a few fender benders from the morning commute, a shoplifting call at a convenience store. Nothing major. Around 10 a.m., dispatch called us. "Unit 47, we need you to return to 2847 Oakmont Drive. Report of suspicious activity at the residence." I felt a knot form in my stomach. "Copy that. Responding now. Can you give me details on the suspicious activity?" "Caller reports seeing someone inside the residence who doesn't appear to be family. Possible break-in." Marcus and I exchanged a concerned look. Robert had said he'd be there for the week dealing with his father's affairs, but maybe he'd stepped out and someone had taken advantage of the empty house. We arrived at Oakmont Drive within minutes. The rental car was gone from the driveway, and the front door appeared to be closed. I radioed our arrival and we approached the house cautiously. As we reached the front porch, I noticed the door was slightly ajar. That wasn't a good sign. "Riverside Police," I called out. "Is anyone inside?" No response. Marcus positioned himself on one side of the door while I took the other. I pushed it open further and peered inside. The living room was a mess. Furniture overturned, drawers pulled out, belongings scattered across the floor. This was definitely a burglary. "Police! If anyone's inside, make yourself known now." We entered carefully, clearing each room methodically. The house appeared empty, but the damage was extensive. Every room had been ransacked. Bedroom dresser drawers dumped out, closets torn apart. Even the kitchen cabinets had been opened and searched. What the hell were they looking for? Marcus wondered aloud. That was a good question. Most burglaries were quick grab-and-go situations. Take the TV, laptop, jewelry, anything obviously valuable. But this looked like someone had been searching for something specific, taking time to go through everything. I noticed that the television was still there, as was an old laptop sitting on the kitchen counter. If this was a standard burglary, those would have been taken. We need to contact Robert Jennings, I said, and we need forensics here to process the scene. I called dispatch to request a detective and crime scene unit, then tried to reach Robert on the number he'd given me yesterday. He answered on the third ring. Mr. Jennings, this is Officer Foster. I'm at your father's house. There's been a break-in. What? I was only gone for 2 hours. I went to the facility to meet with the doctors about Dad's care plan. When you left, was the door locked? Yes, definitely. I double-checked it. And was anyone else given a key? Any family members, neighbors, service people? No, just my sister and me. She doesn't get in until tonight. Officer Foster, what did they take? I looked around at the chaos. That's the strange part. I don't see any obvious items missing. The TV's still here, so is a laptop. It looks like someone was searching for something specific. Do you know if your father kept anything valuable in the house? Important documents, cash, anything like that? There was a pause. There might be something. Dad was always paranoid about banks, especially after the 2008 financial crisis. He kept cash hidden around the house. I was planning to search for it this week. Maybe someone knew about it. That made sense. Elderly people who didn't trust banks often kept substantial amounts of cash hidden in their homes. If word had gotten out that Harold was in the hospital and the house was empty, someone might have seized the opportunity. Do you know approximately how much cash we're talking about? I'm not sure. Dad never told me specifics, but based on things he said over the years, maybe 10 or 20,000, possibly more. I looked at the ransacked rooms with new understanding. Someone had known there was money here and had torn the place apart looking for it. Mr. Jennings, we're going to process this as a crime scene. I'll need you to come back and do a thorough inventory to determine exactly what's missing, and we'll need to change the locks immediately. I'm on my way. Detective Sarah Wu arrived 30 minutes later, a sharp woman in her late 30s who I'd worked with on numerous cases over the years. She walked through the house, taking in the scene with practiced eyes. This is targeted, she said immediately. Whoever did this knew the homeowner was in the hospital and knew there was something worth finding here. The question is, did they find it? The son says his father kept cash hidden throughout the house, but he doesn't know exactly where or how much. So our burglar might have walked away with a significant amount of money, or they might have torn this place apart and found nothing. Detective Wu started photographing the scene. We'll dust for prints, but I'm guessing whoever did this was smart enough to wear gloves. Robert arrived while the crime scene team was working. He looked devastated as he walked through his childhood home, now violated and destroyed. I should have stayed, he said. I should have known leaving it empty was a risk. You can't think like that, I told him. You had no way of knowing this would happen. He moved through the rooms, checking locations where he thought his father might have hidden money. Behind a loose baseball RD in the bedroom, empty. In the tank of the toilet, nothing. In the freezer wrapped in aluminum foil, nothing there either. They found it, he said finally, his voice hollow. Every hiding spot I can think of has been searched. Whoever did this knew what they were looking for and where to look. That suggested someone who knew Harold Jennings, or at least knew enough about his habits to target specific locations. My mind went to the neighbors, to anyone who might have had access to the house or knowledge of the family's situation. I need you to think about anyone who might have known your father kept cash in the house, Detective Wu said. Friends, neighbors, service people, anyone he might have mentioned it to. Robert thought for a moment. Dad was pretty isolated, especially after Mom died. But there's Martha across the street. She checked on him sometimes. And there was a handyman he used for repairs. I think his name was Eddie something. And, there was a home health aide who came for a while last year when Dad had a fall. He fired her after a few weeks, said she was stealing from him. Detective Wu looked up sharply. Did he report the theft? No. He just stopped using the service. You know how he was. Paranoid. Didn't trust authorities. He probably just locked his door and refused to let anyone else in. I need the name of that home health service. While Detective Wu pursued that lead, I walked outside to canvass the neighborhood. The first house I tried was Martha's, the concerned neighbor who'd called in the wellness check yesterday. She answered the door looking worried. Officer Foster, I heard there was a break-in at Harold's house. Is that true? Yes, ma'am. We're investigating now. Did you happen to see anyone around the property this morning? Any vehicles that didn't belong? I've been keeping an eye on the house since Harold went to the hospital, she said. His son came and went a few times, but this morning, maybe around 9:30, I saw a white van pull into the driveway. I thought it might be a service call, someone to fix something or clean, so I didn't think much of it. It was there for maybe 20 or 30 minutes, then left. Can you describe the van? Any company logos, license plate? It was just plain white, no markings that I saw. I didn't get the plate number. I'm sorry. I should have paid more attention. It's okay. You've been very helpful. Did you see who was driving? I couldn't see clearly from here. Just one person, I think. They went inside and I figured they had permission. I thanked Martha and continued down the street, asking other neighbors if they'd seen the van. 2 more residents confirmed seeing it, but no one had gotten a license plate or a clear look at the driver. Back at the house, Detective Wu had made progress. The Home Health Service confirmed they sent an aide named Elena Rodriguez to care for Mr. Jennings last year. She was terminated from the service shortly after Mr. Jennings complained about missing items. Small things, prescription medications, cash from his wallet. The service investigated but couldn't prove anything, so they just removed her from Mr. Jennings' case. You think she came back? I think it's worth checking out. I've got her last known address and I'm pulling her DMV records now. Her computer beeped, and there it is. Elena Rodriguez owns a white 2015 Ford Transit van. Want to take a ride? I looked at Marcus, who nodded. This was technically Detective Wu's case now, but she often appreciated having uniformed officers along for interviews. It sent a message about the seriousness of the situation. The address for Elena Rodriguez was an apartment complex in a lower-income neighborhood about 3 miles from Oakmont Drive. We arrived to find the white van parked in the lot, and I felt a surge of adrenaline. This might actually be our burglar. Detective Wu knocked on the apartment door. Elena Rodriguez, Riverside Police. We need to speak with you. The door opened to reveal a woman in her mid-40s with tired eyes and a defensive posture. What's this about? We're investigating a burglary at 2847 Oakmont Drive, the residence of Harold Jennings. You know Mr. Jennings, don't you? Elena's face went carefully neutral. I used to care for him about a year ago, but I haven't been to that house since then. That's interesting because witnesses saw a white van matching your vehicle at that address this morning, around 9:30 a.m. It wasn't me. I was at work this morning. Where do you work? I do private home care. I was with a client in Arlington Heights all morning. Detective Wu made a note. We'll need that client's name and contact information. But I'd like to ask, do you mind if we take a look at your van? Elena hesitated and I saw fear flicker across her face. Don't you need a warrant for that? Only if you don't consent. But if you have nothing to hide, why not let us take a quick look? It would help clear you as a suspect. It was a calculated gamble. If Elena was smart, she'd refuse and invoke her rights. But people who were guilty often thought that refusing a search made them look more suspicious, so they'd consent, hoping to bluff their way through. Fine, Elena said. Look all you want. You won't find anything. She handed Detective Wu her keys and we walked to the van. The moment Detective Wu opened the back doors, we all saw it. A crowbar lying on the floor, along with work gloves and a backpack. Mind if I look in the backpack? Detective Wu asked. Elena's face had gone pale. She knew she was caught, but she nodded anyway, probably hoping whatever was in there wouldn't be incriminating. Detective Wu opened the backpack and pulled out bundles of cash, $20 bills wrapped with rubber bands, 50s, even some hundreds. There had to be thousands of dollars there. Elena Rodriguez, you're under arrest for burglary, Detective Wu said, pulling out handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. Elena started crying as Detective Wu read her rights. I needed the money, she sobbed. I'm behind on rent. My car needs repairs. I have medical bills. When I heard he was in the hospital, I thought he wouldn't even know it was gone. He didn't have any family checking on him. He has family, I said quietly. A son who flew in from Arizona. A daughter coming tonight. They're trying to arrange care for their father while dealing with his declining health. And now they have to deal with this too. Marcus escorted Elena to his patrol car while Detective Wu inventoried the cash in the backpack. Just over $18,000. A significant amount, but probably not everything Harold had hidden. Elena had found enough to solve her immediate problems and had stopped searching. We transported Elena to the station for booking while Detective Wu returned to the Jennings house to give Robert the news. The money would be held as evidence until the case was adjudicated, but eventually it would be returned to the family. It was after 2 o'clock by the time we finished all the paperwork. I felt a strange mix of emotions, satisfaction at solving the burglary quickly, but also sadness at the whole situation. Elena Rodriguez wasn't a career criminal. She was someone who'd made a desperate choice when facing financial hardship, and now she'd face felony charges that would likely destroy what was left of her life. "Good work today," Detective Wu said as we wrapped up at the station. "Quick thinking on canvassing the neighborhood for the van description. That's what broke the case." "Just following the basics," I said, "but I don't feel great about it." "I know what you mean." She seemed like she was barely holding it together financially. "This is going to make everything worse for her." "That's the job though, right? We enforce the law regardless of circumstances. Doesn't mean we have to like it." I returned to patrol, but the rest of the afternoon was quiet. Just routine traffic stops and a few minor calls. At 3:45, I was back at the station filling out my daily reports when my phone rang. Unknown number. "Officer Foster." "Officer Foster, this is Dr. Martinez from Riverside University Medical Center Psychiatric Unit. I'm calling about Michael Patterson, the individual you brought in yesterday." My stomach tightened. "Is he all right?" "Physically, yes. But I wanted to follow up with you because your name came up repeatedly during his evaluation. He seems to have formed an attachment to you. Keeps talking about the officer who listened to him, who looked at his evidence. It's actually quite unusual." "I just did what I always do. Tried to de-escalate the situation calmly." "Well, whatever you did, it made an impression. Mr. Patterson has been more cooperative with treatment than we've seen in his previous visits. He's agreed to medication adjustments and has been asking when you'll visit." "Visit? I don't usually do follow-up visits with people I've transported for evaluation." "I understand, but I think it might actually be beneficial for his treatment. Sometimes people in psychotic states fixate on an individual they perceive as having truly listened to them. If you could spare 20 minutes, I think it would help reinforce his trust in the treatment process." I looked at the clock. My shift was technically over, but something in Dr. Martinez's voice suggested this was important. "I can come now if that works." "That would be perfect. Thank you, Officer Foster." I drove to the hospital, changed out of my patrol uniform but still wearing my badge. "Doctor?" Martinez met me at the psychiatric unit entrance, a secure floor where patients in crisis were evaluated and stabilized. "Thank you for coming," he said, guiding me through the security doors. "Mr. Patterson has been doing well today. We've adjusted his antipsychotic medication, and he's already showing improved clarity. But he's been asking repeatedly to speak with you. What should I expect? He'll probably want to talk about the conspiracy theories that brought him to the school. The medication will help, but the delusions don't disappear overnight. Just listen, be supportive, but don't validate the paranoid ideation. Help ground him in reality." We entered a common room where several patients were sitting, some watching TV, others reading or talking with staff. Michael Patterson sat alone at a table, his stack of printed conspiracy theories in front of him. He looked up when I entered and his face brightened. "Officer Foster!" He stood up, his movements less agitated than yesterday. "You came. Dr. Martinez said you might, but I wasn't sure if you'd really come." "I heard you wanted to talk," I said, sitting down across from him. Dr. Martinez remained standing nearby, observing but giving us space. Michael looked different today, cleaner, more composed. His eyes still held that intensity I'd seen yesterday, but the wild, panicked quality had diminished. The medication was working, at least partially. "I wanted to apologize," he said, surprising me. "For yesterday, at the school, I wasn't thinking clearly. I thought the children were in danger, that I needed to warn people. But Dr. Martinez has been helping me understand that my thinking was distorted." "That takes a lot of courage to recognize," I said. "How are you feeling today?" "Better, clearer. The voices are quieter now." He touched the papers in front of him. "I was looking at these today, trying to understand why they seem so important to me. They're just websites. Crazy people on the internet writing crazy things. And I believed all of it. When you're not feeling well, it can be hard to tell what's real and what's not," I said carefully. "That's not your fault. That's the illness. But I scared those kids yesterday. I scared you and the other officers. I had my hand in my pocket and you thought I might have a weapon." He looked at me with sudden clarity. "You could have shot me. You would have been justified. But you didn't. You just kept talking to me, kept trying to help me calm down. Why?" I thought about how to answer that. "Because I could see you were scared and confused. Because pulling a weapon should always be the last option, not the first. And because I've done this job long enough to recognize when someone needs help more than they need handcuffs." Most cops wouldn't have done that. I'd like to think most cops would have, I said, though I wasn't entirely sure that was true. But I've had a lot of practice with situations like yours, and I could see that underneath the paranoia and fear, you were just someone who was sick and needed help. Michael was quiet for a moment, processing this. I used to have a life, he said finally. A career, an apartment, friends. I was a software engineer, made good money, had a future. Then the schizophrenia hit in my mid-30s, and everything fell apart. Lost my job because I couldn't focus, couldn't trust my coworkers. Lost my apartment because I couldn't keep up with rent. Lost my friends because I kept accusing them of being part of conspiracies against me. I'm sorry. That must have been incredibly difficult. The worst part is knowing it's happening but not being able to stop it. Even when I'm on medication and thinking clearly, I know it's only temporary. I'll have another episode eventually. I'll end up back here or in jail or on the streets. That's just how my life is now. The resignation in his voice was heartbreaking. This wasn't someone who'd chosen his circumstances. This was someone trapped in a cycle of illness and a mental health care system that wasn't equipped to truly help him. Dr. Martinez says you're doing better with treatment this time, I said. That's progress. Because of you. Because you treated me like a person instead of just a problem to be solved. That made me want to try harder, to cooperate with treatment instead of fighting it. I felt the weight of that responsibility. One interaction, one relatively routine call, and somehow I'd become a touchstone for this man's recovery. It was humbling and overwhelming. Mr. Patterson, I'm glad I could help, but the real work is going to be done by you and Dr. Martinez and the rest of the treatment team. I'm just a cop who responded to a call. You're more than that, he insisted. You reminded me that I'm still human, still worth helping. Do you know how rare that is? How many times I've been treated like garbage by people who were supposed to help. I thought about all the times over my career I'd transported people in mental health crisis, the ones I'd handled well, and the ones I'd handled poorly, the times I'd been patient and compassionate, and the times I'd been frustrated and dismissive. We were all human, and we all had our limits. But clearly, when we did show compassion, it mattered more than we often realized. I'm going to try to do better this time, Michael continued. Stay on my medication, work with the social worker to get into more stable housing. Maybe even find some kind of work I can do. I know it won't be easy. I know I'll probably have setbacks, but I want to try. That's all any of us can do, I said. Try our best, one day at a time. We talked for about 20 more minutes. He showed me the papers he'd been so convinced were evidence of vast conspiracies, and with the medication working, he could see them for what they were, paranoid rantings that had fed his own illness. It was like watching someone emerge from a fog. Clarity slowly replacing confusion. When I finally left the hospital, it was after 5 o'clock. My shift had ended an hour ago, but I didn't regret staying. Sometimes the job extended beyond the official duties, beyond the calls and reports and arrests. Sometimes it was about human connection, about showing someone in crisis that they still mattered. I drove home thinking about the day, the burglary solved, Elena Rodriguez arrested and facing the consequences of her desperate choice. Michael Patterson hopefully on a better path to recovery. Wins and losses mixed together, as they always were in this job. Sarah was in the kitchen when I got home preparing dinner before her night shift. You're late, she observed. Everything okay? Yeah, just had to follow up on yesterday's call. The guy from the school, he wanted to talk to me. I told her about the visit, about Michael's progress and his gratitude. Sarah listened with the understanding of someone who'd spent decades in healthcare. That's the part they don't tell you about in training, she said. How much these interactions affect people. You probably don't even remember most of the people you've helped over the years, but they remember you. She was right. I'd transported hundreds of people to psychiatric holds over my career, responded to countless crisis situations. Most of them blurred together in memory, just another call among thousands. But for them, it was often a defining moment, the day they were at their lowest, and how they were treated in that moment stayed with them. How many days until retirement? Sarah asked with a knowing smile. 1,698, I said. But who's counting? We ate dinner together, a rare synchronization of our schedules. She told me about a patient she'd had the night before, a teenager who'd attempted suicide and was angry about being saved. Sarah had spent hours talking to her, trying to help her see that life could get better. It was the same kind of work I did, just in a different setting. Do you ever wonder if we're making any real difference? I asked. Or are we just putting band-aids on problems that are too big to fix? Every day, she admitted. But then I think about the teenager who comes back a year later to thank me for saving her life. Or the trauma patient who survives because we did our jobs well. Or the elderly patient who dies with dignity because we made sure they weren't alone. We can't fix everything, Dan, but we can make individual moments better for individual people. And maybe that's enough. Maybe it was. I wanted to believe that. After Sarah left for work, I sat in my study and opened my laptop. I'd been keeping a journal lately. Nothing formal, just notes about significant calls and my reflections on them. The therapist had suggested it as a way to process the accumulated trauma of the job. I wrote about Harold Jennings, about how his fierce independence and pride had kept him isolated until crisis forced intervention. I wrote about Elena Rodriguez, about how financial desperation had driven her to make choices that would haunt her. I wrote about Michael Patterson, about mental illness and the broken systems meant to help people like him. And I wrote about myself, about the weight of 23 years of witnessing human suffering, about the countdown to retirement, about the question of who I would be when I was no longer Officer Foster. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica, my daughter in San Francisco. "Hey Dad, just checking in. How's work going?" I smiled. My kids had grown up with a cop for a father, had absorbed all the worry and uncertainty that came with it. But they'd also seen the purpose in what I did, the importance of service. "Work's fine," I texted back. "Helped some people this week. How's the legal world treating you?" "Drowning in briefs and depositions. But I'm making a difference, I think. Fighting for people who need it. That's all we can do," I replied. "Make a difference where we can." We texted for a few more minutes, and I felt grateful for the relationship I had with my kids. Despite the long hours and the stress of my job, Sarah and I had managed to raise two good humans who cared about making the world better. That felt like an accomplishment worth celebrating. Chapter 5. Full circle. The next morning started like all the others. Alarm at 5:30, the familiar routine of preparing for another shift. But something felt different today. Lighter, maybe. The melancholy that had been weighing on me after the Jennings call had lifted somewhat. Roll call was routine. Sergeant Morrison mentioned that the burglary arrest from yesterday had made the news. Local station had run a story about the vulnerable elderly being targeted by people they'd trusted with their care. Elena Rodriguez was being held on $50,000 bail pending arraignment. "Good police work by Foster Wu and the team," Morrison said. "Quick resolution, suspect in custody, property recovered. That's how it's supposed to work." Marcus nudged me. "Look at you, making the sergeant proud." "Just doing the job," I muttered, uncomfortable with the attention. We were assigned to District 4 again, which had become our regular area this week. As we prepared to head out, Officer Janet Rodriguez stopped me. "Hey Dan, I wanted to ask you something. My nephew is thinking about becoming a cop, and he wants to do a ride-along. Would you be willing to take him out sometime? He could use a good role model, someone who actually cares about the work." I hesitated. Ride-alongs meant having someone watching your every move, asking questions, disrupting the routine. But I remembered my own ride-along when I was considering this career, how the officer I shadowed had shaped my understanding of what it meant to wear the badge. "Sure," I said. "Have him contact the department to arrange it. I'd be happy to show him what the job really looks like." "Thanks, Dan. It means a lot." Marcus and I headed out to District 4. The morning was quiet. A few traffic stops, a welfare check that turned out to be nothing, a noise complaint from neighbors arguing about a barking dog. Standard calls that required patience and people skills more than anything dramatic. Around 11 a.m., we were parked at a coffee shop taking a break when my phone rang. Unknown number again. "Officer Foster. Officer Foster, this is Robert Jennings. I wanted to update you on my father." "Of course, how is he?" "Better, actually. The memory care facility is wonderful. He's on proper medication now, eating regularly, and he seems calmer. He doesn't always remember who I am, but he seems content. That's more than I hoped for, honestly. I'm glad to hear that. There's something else. We found more hidden cash while cleaning out the house. Another $12,000 that Elena Rodriguez didn't find. Combined with what the police recovered, that's $30,000. It's enough to pay for Dad's care for at least a year, maybe more. If she'd just asked, if she'd told someone she was struggling financially, maybe we could have helped her. Instead, she destroyed her life over money that was going to be used for care anyway. I thought about Elena in her jail cell, facing felony charges, probably losing her home care license forever. Desperation makes people do things they wouldn't otherwise consider, I suppose. Anyway, I wanted to thank you again for everything, for talking Dad down, for solving the burglary so quickly, for treating our family crisis with dignity. You could have just forced your way into the house that first morning, could have handled everything by the book without compassion. But you didn't, and that made all the difference. After we hung up, I sat there for a moment processing the conversation. This was the outcome we hoped for but didn't always get. Problem solved, family getting the care they needed, closure and gratitude. These moments were rare enough to appreciate. Good news? Marcus asked. Yeah, sometimes things actually work out. The afternoon brought more routine calls, and I found myself settling into the rhythm of the work without the heavy weight I'd been carrying. Maybe Sarah was right. You couldn't fix everything, but you could make individual moments better for individual people. At 3:30, we got a call that made my heart skip. All units, we have a report of a suicidal subject at 4200 Canyon Crest Drive. Subject is on a roof, threatening to jump. Crisis negotiation team is en route but won't arrive for at least 20 minutes. Closest units, please respond. Canyon Crest Drive was only about 3 minutes away. Marcus and I activated our lights and sirens and headed toward the location. You've talked down 2 people this week, Marcus said as we drove. Want to make it 3? I'd rather nobody needed talking down, I replied, but I was already mentally preparing for what we might encounter. We arrived at a 2-story apartment complex where a crowd had gathered below one of the buildings. On the roof, clearly visible, was a young woman, early 20s, I guessed, sitting on the edge with her legs dangling over. She was crying, her whole body shaking with sobs. A man who identified himself as the apartment manager rushed over to us. Her name is Amanda Cervantes. She's 23, lives in apartment 214. Her roommate called 911 after finding a suicide note. By the time we got up there, she'd climbed out onto the roof through a maintenance access. Has anyone talked to her? Her roommate tried, but Amanda told her to stay away or she'd jump. We've been waiting for you guys. I looked up at Amanda on the roof. She was maybe 25 feet up, high enough that a fall would likely be fatal or cause severe injuries. The wind was picking up, making her position even more precarious. Marcus, crowd control. Get these people back and keep the area clear. If she falls or jumps, I don't want bystanders getting hurt. On it. I approached the building carefully, keeping my movements slow and visible. Amanda, my name is Officer Dan Foster. Can you hear me? She looked down, her face red and blotchy from crying. Stay away. I mean it. I'll jump. I'm not coming up there, Amanda. I'm just going to stand down here and talk to you if that's okay. You don't have to say anything back if you don't want to. Just listen. I positioned myself where she could see me without having to lean forward dangerously. Behind me, I could hear Marcus clearing the area and other units arriving. Back up, fire department with their ladder truck, paramedics standing by. Amanda, I don't know what you're going through right now. I don't know what brought you to this moment. But I've been a cop for 23 years, and I've talked to a lot of people who felt the way you do right now. And you know what I've learned? That moment, that feeling like there's no way out, like ending everything is the only option. That feeling passes. It always passes. You don't understand, she shouted down. You can't understand. You're right. I can't fully understand your specific situation, but I understand pain. I understand feeling hopeless. I understand being so tired that continuing seems impossible. Then you know why I'm doing this. I know why you think you're doing this. But Amanda, here's the thing. Suicide isn't about wanting to die. It's about wanting the pain to stop. And there are other ways to stop the pain, ways that don't involve dying. There's no other way. I've tried everything. Therapy, medication, nothing works. I'm just broken. My radio crackled. The crisis negotiation team was 10 minutes out. I needed to keep her talking, keep her engaged until professionals trained specifically for this could take over. You're not broken, Amanda. You're hurt. There's a difference. Broken things can't be fixed. Hurt things can heal. It just takes time and the right help. I don't have time. I can't keep living like this. Every day is agony. Every single day I wake up wishing I hadn't. I heard the raw pain in her voice and felt it resonate with something inside me. How many days had I woken up dreading the shift ahead? How many times had I questioned whether I could keep doing this job? It wasn't the same as what Amanda was experiencing, but I understood that particular form of exhaustion. I hear you, I said. Living with that kind of pain is exhausting. It takes more strength than people realize just to keep going day after day. The fact that you've made it this far, that you've kept fighting this long, that takes incredible courage. Courage? She laughed bitterly. I'm about to jump off a building. That's not courage. That's cowardice. No, it's not. Cowardice would be never admitting you're struggling, never asking for help, never trying to change things. You've been fighting this battle for a long time, haven't you? How long have you been feeling this way? There was a pause. Since I was 16. 7 years of this. 7 years of trying to be normal, trying to be happy, trying to be like everyone else. I'm so tired of trying. 7 years is a long time to carry that weight. But Amanda, you're 23 years old. You have so much life ahead of you. So many experiences you haven't had yet. People you haven't met. Places you haven't been. What if things could get better? What if 6 months from now, a year from now, you found something that actually helped? And what if they don't? What if this is just who I am? What if I spend another 7 years trying and failing and hurting and I end up here again anyway? Why not just end it now? It was a question I didn't have a good answer for. Why keep fighting when fighting was so hard and the outcome so uncertain? I thought about my own countdown to retirement, my own exhaustion with the job. But I also thought about the moments that made it worthwhile, helping Harold Jennings, connecting with Michael Patterson, solving the burglary and bringing some justice to a vulnerable family. Because you don't know what tomorrow brings, I said finally. None of us do. Yeah, tomorrow might be hard, it might be another day of struggling. But it also might be the day something changes. The day you meet someone who understands. The day you find a treatment that actually works. The day you wake up and the pain is just a little bit less. You'll never know if you're not here to see it. Fire Chief Rodriguez had arrived with the ladder truck and was setting up below, preparing to extend the ladder to the roof level if needed. The crisis negotiation team would be here in minutes. I just had to keep Amanda engaged until then. My roommate called you guys, didn't she? Amanda asked. She did, because she cares about you, because she doesn't want to lose you. She'd be better off without me. Everyone would. I'm just a burden, just someone everyone has to worry about and take care of. I guarantee your roommate doesn't see it that way. Nobody who cares about someone sees them as a burden. They see someone they love who's struggling and needs support. That's different. You don't know her. You don't know me. You're just saying things you think will keep me from jumping. You're right. I don't know you. But I'd like to. I'd like to know what brought you to this moment. I'd like to know what your dreams were before the depression took hold. I'd like to know what makes you laugh, what you're passionate about, what matters to you. Because I believe that person is still in there, under all the pain and exhaustion, and that person deserves a chance to live. Amanda was crying again, her shoulders shaking. The wind picked up and I saw her grip the edge of the roof tighter. My heart was pounding. This could go either way. She could climb back to safety, or she could let go and fall. I'm scared, she said, her voice small. I know, and that's okay. Being scared means you're not sure about this. Part of you wants to live, even if part of you wants the pain to stop. Listen to that first part, Amanda. Listen to the part that's scared, because that's the part that knows there's still hope. A van pulled up, the crisis negotiation team. Lieutenant Karen Morrison, no relation to my sergeant, got out. A trained negotiator I'd worked with before. She approached quietly, assessing the situation. I gave her a quick briefing and she nodded. You're doing great, Foster. Keep her engaged while I get positioned. I continued talking to Amanda, asking her about her life, her interests, anything to keep her connected to reasons for living. She told me about her love of painting, how she'd wanted to be an artist, but depression had made it impossible to create. She told me about her family, who didn't understand mental illness and kept telling her to just be positive. She told me about the loneliness of fighting an invisible battle that nobody else could see. Lieutenant Morrison took over gradually, her trained voice calm and professional. She had techniques I didn't, training in de-escalation specific to suicidal individuals. I stepped back, letting her work, but stayed visible so Amanda knew I hadn't left. It took another 40 minutes. 40 minutes of careful conversation, of building trust, of finding reasons for Amanda to choose life over death. The fire department had the ladder ready, positioned so that if she fell, there was at least a chance of catching her. Finally, Amanda nodded. Okay, she said, her voice exhausted. Okay, I'll come down. Lieutenant Morrison guided her back through the maintenance access where paramedics were waiting. They checked her vital signs, talked to her gently, and prepared to transport her to the hospital for evaluation and treatment. Before they loaded her into the ambulance, Amanda looked at me. Thank you for not giving up on me. I never would, I said, and I hope you won't give up on yourself either. As the ambulance drove away, I felt the adrenaline drain from my body, leaving me shaky and exhausted. Lieutenant Morrison clapped me on the shoulder. "Good work, Foster. You kept her engaged until we could get here. That saved her life. I just talked to her. That's all it takes sometimes. Just someone willing to listen, to see them as human, to give them a reason to hold on a little longer." I thought about Michael Patterson saying something similar, that I'd treated him like a person instead of a problem. Maybe that was the common thread in all of this, the thing that made the difference. Not tactics or training or procedure, but simple human connection. Marcus drove us back to the station. My shift had technically ended 30 minutes ago, but I still had reports to write. As I sat at my desk, documenting the incident, I thought about Amanda on that roof, about Harold Jennings with his knife, about Michael Patterson at the school. 3 people in crisis, 3 opportunities to help or fail, 3 chances to make a difference. I'd made it 23 years in this job without becoming completely cynical, without losing the part of me that cared about helping people. That felt like an accomplishment. Only 1,697 days left until retirement, and then I'd have to figure out who I was without this identity. But for now, I was Officer Dan Foster, and this was what I did. Sergeant Morrison stopped by my desk. "Hell of a week, Foster. You've handled 3 major incidents with skill and compassion. That's the kind of policing this department needs." "Just trying to get through to retirement, Sarge." She smiled. "Well, keep doing what you're doing until then. You're making a difference, whether you fully believe it or not." After finishing my paperwork, I drove home thinking about the day, the week, the career. 23 years of calls like these, of people in crisis, of moments where everything could go right or horribly wrong. It was exhausting work, but it mattered. Individual moments might seem small in the grand scheme of things, but for the people involved, they were everything. Sarah was just getting up when I arrived home, preparing for another night shift. We had maybe an hour together before she had to leave. "How was your day?" she asked. "Talked someone off a roof, literally." I told her about Amanda, about the 40 minutes of careful conversation, about the relief when she chose to come down. Sarah listened with the understanding of someone who'd made similar life-or-death interventions in her own career. "Did you tell her about the days you've counted until retirement?" she asked gently. "No, but I thought about it, about how we all have our ways of coping with difficult lives. Mine is counting down days. Hers was standing on a roof. The difference is I found a way to cope that doesn't end everything. You also found purpose in your work even when it's hard. You've spent 23 years helping people. That's not nothing, Dan. I know. Some days it's harder to remember that than others. But you remember it when it matters, when you're talking to someone like Amanda or Harold or that man at the school. That's when it counts." After Sarah left for work, I sat in my study and added to my journal. I wrote about Amanda on the roof, about the fear I'd felt watching her teeter on the edge, about the relief when she chose life. I wrote about the common thread I'd noticed, that treating people with dignity and compassion, seeing them as humans rather than problems, seemed to make all the difference. And I wrote about purpose, about how this job had given me purpose for 23 years, and how I was slowly coming to terms with the idea that I could find purpose beyond the badge. Maybe in volunteering, maybe in mentoring young officers, maybe just in being present for my family, in ways the demanding schedule of police work had never fully allowed. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Saw the news about an officer talking someone off a roof in Riverside. That was you, wasn't it?" "How'd you know?" I texted back. "Because that's what you do, Dad. You help people. I'm proud of you." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. My kids understood what this job meant, what it cost, and why I kept doing it despite the exhaustion. "Thanks, kiddo. That means more than you know." I looked at the calendar on my wall where I'd been marking off days. 1,697 days until retirement. It seemed like both an eternity and no time at all. But maybe I needed to stop counting down and start appreciating what remained. There would be more Harolds, more Michaels, more Amandas, more chances to help, more opportunities to make those individual moments better. The job was hard. It was exhausting and sometimes heartbreaking. It accumulated weight that you carried forever. But it also mattered in ways that were hard to quantify. One conversation at a time, one crisis averted, one life potentially saved. Officer Dan Foster, Riverside Police Department. 1,697 days left, but who's counting? I closed my journal and went to bed, ready to do it all again tomorrow. Because that's what the job required, and despite everything, it's what I still wanted to do. Help people, make a difference, show up when called and give people their best chance at a better outcome. One call at a time, one day at a time, until retirement, and whatever came after. But for now, this was enough.